What's going on, guys, and welcome to the Sports Crack channel, first video of the rebrand. And today, as you can see right here, we're going over my SEC predictions, schedule, and everything like that. So first off, obviously, number one team in the nation, best team in the nation, repeat, the Georgia Bulldogs. So I will admit we have a pretty easy-ish schedule. I think it's harder than a lot of other people think it was due to like transfers and everything like that. Um, that being said, first two games gonna be a win. UT Martin, Ball State, both W's. South Carolina, I think South Carolina's defense is gonna be better than it was last year. That being said, I think Carson Beck is gonna have a really good year. Um, he's just like people just think, oh, it's some random kid. Carson Beck could start on pretty much almost every school in the SEC, probably in the nation, and he could have started last year if Stetson didn't have such a good year the year prior. So W again, UAB is going to be a win. Auburn, I don't think they'll have that much success in Hugh Freeze's first year, but Georgia will win. Kentucky, their QB, there's been so much just random hype around him that I don't think will be warranted at all. Um, that'll be a W. Vandy, obviously W. Vandy. Florida, W. I think they're gonna have a lot of program issues this year. A lot of switching in and out quarterbacks, if I'm being honest. So Missouri is gonna be W. Ole Miss is gonna be a hard. I think it's gonna be the closest game of the season. And Florida is after them. I'll tell you why in a second. I do think it'll be the closest game of the season. Next, Tennessee. Milton has had this big arm, throw far hype around him before when he was at Michigan. I just don't think he lives up to it. I don't like. He led them to a loss against a Clemson team who wasn't even that good. So, and then Tech. It's gonna be obviously a W. Next on the list, we have the Gators, Florida Gators. Um, like I said, I think they're going to do a lot of QB swapping. Um, I got to recording this late. The game versus Utah is going to be live. I think it's going to be a really close game, in my opinion, or it's going to be a blowout. I said either a blowout or within a field goal. Right now, 4-point game. Florida has the ball, 3rd and 12. So I think, I don't know. McNeese is going to be a W for them. Tennessee is going to be an L. First three games, 1 and 2. Charlotte's going to be a W. Kentucky is going to be a W. Like I said, I don't think their quarterback is really going to be that good. I mean, everyone's hyped up Will Levis, and look what he did. He didn't do too good that past year. Vandy's going to be a W. South Carolina is going to be an L. Then you got the Bulldogs, L. Arkansas, I think they can beat Arkansas. KJ Jefferson, I don't think he's been in the SEC for so long and hasn't really done anything at all. So I think that'll be an L for them. LSU obviously is going to be an L. Missouri, they're going to win against Missouri and then lose against Florida State. Florida State has a few SEC opponents this year, and they could be 2-0, honestly. This is Kentucky. So they're in a weird spot, like I said, with their quarterback. I just don't really know how they're gonna live up to it. They're gonna win against Ball State, win against Eastern Kentucky, win against Akron, win against Vandy. So right off the bat, 4-0. It seems like they do that every year, though. So we'll have to end up seeing how that actually plays out. The first loss is going to be against Florida, and then they're going to lose to Georgia. Even with Florida's QB switching, like I keep saying, they're going to lose to them. Win against Missouri, lose against Tennessee, Mississippi State. I've kind of been on the fence about that, but they lose to them, lose to Bama, lose to South Carolina, and then beat Louisville, and that's probably just SEC biased against the ACC. I don't think, but I genuinely don't think they'll lose to Louisville. Next up, we have the Missouri Tigers. They're playing right now. I don't think they're gonna have that good of a season. I'll put the final scores in for the Florida game and the Missouri game. As I'm recording this on Thursday night, it'll come out on Friday. But I have them down for a win against South Dakota. I have them for a win against Middle Tennessee. It's Middle Tennessee. Kansas State, I have them as an L. They built a pretty good program. They did lose a few people to draft and transfer, but I think they will lose to them. I think Memphis can win, or they'll win against Memphis, but Memphis is always surprising. So they could definitely lose that game. Vandy, they'll win against Vandy. Oh, never mind. I didn't have that. I put a loss against Vandy. I think this is one of the few SEC wins that they'll have is against Missouri. LSU, obviously they're going to lose unless something catastrophic happens to that program. Kentucky, we already went over that. That's going to be a loss. South Carolina, UGA, Florida, Arkansas, all losses. I think they're going to end the season all losses, have the worst record in the SEC in my opinion. You never know. I do genuinely think that they could lose to Vandy. Next up, we have the Vanderbilt Commodores. Played one game. We're waiting to see how they do. They won against Hawaii earlier, making them 1-0. They're the first place in the SEC right now, as no one else has played a game, but Florida is playing a game right now. So Alabama and A&M, I think, will be a W. Wake Forest is going to be a loss. UNLV could beat them, and I think they will. Kentucky is going to be a loss. Missouri is going to be a W. Florida is going to be an L. Georgia is going to be an L. Ole Miss is going to be an L. Auburn, South Carolina, Tennessee, L. So they could be, Missouri and Vandy could be tied, going back to what I said when we were talking about Missouri being the last place team. They could very well tie. I think it's a coin flip, whoever loses. So actually I think I said they would beat Missouri, so change that to a W against Missouri if I said no. Next up, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think they could be really surprising this year, honestly. I do. Like I said, their transfers and everything. It all depends on Spencer Rattler. If he can actually play this year, then he'll actually produce. Fuck. Alright. Next up, we have the South Carolina Gamecocks. I think they could be a surprise team in the SEC this year with their transfers, their defense. Got a lot of high talent defensive players from the transfer portal. Going into game one against North Carolina, I actually think they might win that game. It's going to be close, but they could win. Just depends the whole season really depends on Spencer Rattler. If he can perform how he was at Oklahoma his freshman year, then they will have a successful season. If not, bottom tier SEC team. Furman, they will get a dub. Georgia, loss. I think they can beat Mississippi State. I don't think they can beat Tennessee. I just don't. I think they retained a lot of people on defense, so that'll help Tennessee win that game. Florida, they'll beat Missouri. They'll beat Texas A&M. That could be a coin flip too. I initially put down South Carolina winning that game, so they could win that. Jacksonville, they'll win. Vandy, they'll win. Kentucky, they'll win. And then Clemson, another story where the quarterback has to produce for them to be successful. So that's another coin flip, in my opinion. Next up, we got the Tennessee Volunteers, one of the most overhyped teams of last season. Probably one of the most overhyped teams this season as well. They start off versus Virginia. I think they get a W. Austin Peay, they win. Florida, W. UTSA, W. I think they win against South Carolina. Bama, they'll lose to Bama, I genuinely think. Um, Kentucky, Missouri, W. They'll lose to Georgia, and then they beat Vandy. Still ending out on a pretty good record. But this season, the play, I think it's, or next season. Next season, the kind of East and West will change into just the top two teams in the conference, which is like, because some years you can have two West, some years you could have two East. Like probably last year, you could have two East teams in the conference championship, Georgia and Tennessee. Just the head-to-head losses. And now going into the SEC West, we're starting off with the Alabama Crimson Tide, one of the most dominant programs of my lifetime in college football. Starting seemingly to go on a decline. Not really. Alabama will be great until Nick Saban leaves. That's what's going to happen. Start off with Middle Tennessee State. That'll be a W. The first big game of the year is against Texas, and I think they'll lose that. For their future SEC opponent, Texas moving in to the SEC. I think Texas would have lost last year if Quinn stayed healthy. Might be a hot take. I don't think so. Quinn Ewers is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation this year. He could have been last year. They got A.D. Mitchell, my boy. Love that guy at Georgia. He has some of the biggest touchdowns in Georgia history. Probably of each season he probably had if there's top 3 catches, he had at least 2 of them. Then bounce back with a win against South Florida. Ole Miss, they'll beat Mississippi State. They'll beat. It's really just a sweep for the rest of their schedule, except for LSU. I really don't know who's going to win that game. It just depends on Jaden Daniels and Alabama's quarterback. I'm not sure who is starting for them because I haven't heard much from the Alabama camp. But whoever wins, it's up to their quarterback. They're gonna have a good defense no matter what. If Alabama can score, and which they've proven that they can score, they'll be a top team in the nation all the time. Like I said, I think their next closest game is either going to be Ole Miss or Tennessee. Like I said, Auburn. If it will be surprising to me if they are in at least a touchdown of Alabama, honestly. Next up, we have the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is one of those teams where they can be good in a different if they were in the East, they could be good, but they're stuck in the West with all these good teams. I think Sam Pittman's a great coach, former Georgia coach. He did great at Georgia, but I just don't know. I think they're just in a weird spot right now. Maybe it opens up when Texas and Oklahoma come in, but I think they're just going to be kind of in the middle of the pack, really, for the whole conference, not just the West, the whole conference, middle to lower. But open up the season with Western Carolina. I think they get a dub there. Kent State, W, BYU, W, 3-0 to start off, but then they go into Baton Rouge to face LSU. I think that's an L. I think they lose to A&M, Ole Miss, and Bama. So 4-game skid for them. Come back and beat Mississippi State. Lose to Florida and Auburn, and then end out with W's against Florida International and Missouri. KJ Jefferson's just one of those weird, because he can have his moments. Absolutely he can. But I don't think he can keep it up. He's not that consistent of a player. Next up, we have the Auburn Tigers. One of the big storylines of the SEC this year, I think. Hugh Freeze coming in as head coach. A bunch of changes to their offense and defense. So, starting off, they got Massachusetts to open up. I think that's a W. They go to Cal. I think that'll be a W. Samford, W. Same thing. 3 wins to start off. Then they have a tough opponent in A&M. I think they beat A&M. Then they play Georgia at home. Even if it's at home, I think they still lose. Um, then they play at LSU in Baton Rouge. I think they'll lose that game. I actually think they'll beat Ole Miss. Could be crazy. You can call me crazy if you want. I think they'll beat Ole Miss. Mississippi State. That one could be a coin flip too. I think it's kind of a weird circumstance with both of those teams. Um, then they play Vandy, win. Arkansas win. New Mexico State win, and they lose to Bama. And like I said, I think I'll be surprised if they're in at 1 touchdown of Alabama. Next, we have the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They're in a weird spot, I think. Mike Leach passing, rest in peace, last season. It's going to be interesting to see how their new coach comes in, runs that offense. Mike Leach was famous for the air raid offense. It'll be really interesting seeing how he does in that. 2 wins to start off the season against Southeastern Louisiana. And then they play Arizona. I think they win that. And they have 3 tough games, I think, for them. Losing them all. LSU, South Carolina, Alabama. Bounce back with a win against Western Michigan. Losing to Arkansas. Being close to Auburn, like I said, it's weird. It could be either. Winning against Kentucky, losing against A&M, beating Southern Miss, and then losing the Egg Bowl to Ole Miss. But the Egg Bowl, you can't really predict it at all. Next up, we have the Ole Miss Rebels, Land Sharks, whatever you want to call them now. I have no idea. They've got a few ranked games on their schedule right now. I think that will change once the season starts going along. Other teams will probably get ranked. They'll start off with Mercer, win that game, then Tulane. I think they'll beat Tulane and then beat Georgia Tech. 2 losses back-to-back against Alabama and LSU. One of them might be close. Never know. Lane's always got something up his sleeve. Beating Arkansas, losing to Auburn, winning against Vandy, beating Texas A&M, losing to Georgia, and then winning out UL Monroe and Mississippi State. But like I just said, Egg Bowl, always unpredictable. And the last team in the SEC we're talking about is the A&M Aggies, Texas A&M. I think Jimbo's definitely gonna be on the hot seat this year, with all the shit that he's done and everything, like just the recruiting, the payments, the war he had with Saban. He's definitely gonna be on the hot seat, but I think they'll open up 3 wins for their season. New Mexico State, Miami, UL Monroe. Miami could be surprising. They are playing in Miami, so we'll see. I think they lose against Auburn, beat Arkansas, lose to Alabama. Like I said, it just depends on that offense. Lose to Tennessee and South Carolina. 3 L's back to back. I think they beat Mississippi State, or beat Mississippi State. Sorry, and then beat Albany Christian. I think I said that right. And then lose to LSU in the season. So with that being said, that is the end of the picks for me. I'll have weekly picks out. Probably not this week. Next week for the top 25, we'll go over rankings changes. Maybe like the bottom 25. So the bottom 5, bottom 10 might switch. But I don't really see any changes coming in these first few weeks. With that being said, my SEC championship prediction is going to be Georgia for the East and Alabama for the West. Because that LSU game, it all depends on the LSU-Alabama game. And then, biased, I think Georgia will win the SEC, claim that number 1 spot. So thank you all so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll be posting more content in the following days and weeks. And I'll see you next time.